Welcome in for another episode of the Silver and Blue Podcast. I'm your host, Nate Sanchez. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Corey Douglas. Corey, we are sitting now at 10-3. We're doing our Texans review pod a little later than normal. Just, life comes up. We weren't able to record on Monday. Honestly, I'm kind of glad we weren't able to because there's some news that came down Monday that we're going to discuss as well regarding the Cowboys and adding a certain wide receiver. But first, how are you feeling, Corey?
Yeah, we're feeling pretty good. What they say in the NFL, a win is a win, no matter how ugly it appears to be. And there's a lot of naysayers out there now, especially in the national media. Rob Gronkowski, Richard Sherman, that are kind of off the Cowboys bandwagon right now after Sunday's performance. But overall, 10-3 feels pretty good, and if we can get some help for anybody to beat Philly, that would be nice. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen. But again, 10-3 is cool, and can't be too mad at it, although there's a lot to dissect from this game on Sunday.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot to talk about. Honestly, one quick thing about, just because you kind of touched on it, the media kind of hopping off the Cowboys after this game. Just find it funny that when the Eagles, played awful for three and a half quarters and came back from down big against the Colts, it was and Jalen Hurts drives them all the way down. And by drives them, I mean didn't complete a single pass. Again, not hating on Jalen Hurts' season. He's had a great season, but people talked about that as his MVP moment. But when the Cowboys do the same thing against a bad team, it's are they frauds? So I just think it's funny how the talking heads discuss the Cowboys. Just the funny double standard that I picked up on this week. How when the Eagles did it, it was oh, great teams win when they still play bad, but when the Cowboys did it, it was an entirely different narrative. But yeah, and one quick thing, if for some reason you want to go back and listen to our Texans preview podcast, uh, it's up on YouTube, but for some reason I edited and posted it, and for some reason it never posted. So this is episode 44. If you're looking on our Spotify feed and you're like that, Nate doesn't know how to count. Texas preview is episode 43, and for some reason it just never posted. I feel like at this point I'm not gonna go back and repost it since the game's already gone. But if you do want to go see that, by the way, go check it out. It's on our YouTube channel. But um, we got let's talk about Ty Hilton first, and then we'll discuss the game. Um, I like this pickup a lot, just from a standpoint of, and Ty Hilton's had a lot of injury issues. And so, I wasn't super on board with this back in, say, June or July during training camp, because it's like, you know, I wouldn't love this signing happening now because, we know T.Y. Hilton's health issues. We know he can't hold up for a whole season. Um, but I'm open to him holding up for the final stretch run. And at worst, he raises the floor of your wide receiver room. He still has a little bit of the speed that we've seen from him in years past, and he's a good veteran presence that I'm sure will be very helpful to Michael Gallup and CeeDee Lamb, kind of similar to what we have seen out of Jason Peters this year. So, we'll see what he can bring on the field, but there's no real downside to bringing T.Y. Hilton in.
Yeah, I think one thing Jerry said in his radio hit today is that one of the biggest, I guess, factors in signing T.Y. Hilton was the availability right now. We've spent the last few weeks talking about the Odell situation, and Odell's since come out and said that he really had no interest in playing in the regular season because he didn't see a point in that. T.Y. Hilton's a guy that is going to come in. He's a veteran presence. I think he can bring a lot to this receiver room, even if he doesn't really contribute much on the field at all. I do like his presence in the wide receiver room. Get a vet, kind of in CD's ear and Gallup's ear. And maybe just a different perspective as far as like watching film and kind of how see how he goes about his business. So I think overall, I think regardless of whether he contributes or not on the field, I just think the off the field aspect is definitely an underrated part, especially when you start getting into these important games in December and hopefully long into January.
Mm-hmm.
You need guys that have that experience, and I think he brings that. And I'm interested to see what he brings on the field too.
Yeah, I just, the Cowboys kind of just needed one more receiver, and that's kind of why they've been so all in on OBJ. even though it seems like that probably isn't going to happen. Although he was asked about that today, and he still did not close the door on OBJ. So maybe they still sign OBJ and he comes in for the playoffs. We'll see. But yeah, at the very least, this raises your floor. I think Ty Hilton's a better player than James Washington, even at this point in Ty's career. But yeah, there's just no real downside to this. I really like the move. And maybe he adds a much needed vertical speed element to this Cowboys offense. The offense has been really good since Dak has come back, but we haven't really had that vertical, deep aspect to the offense, and that's what we're getting here with Ty Hilton. And again, it's a good veteran presence to have with a ton of experience that is going to be a valuable guy to players like CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup. So I like the signing. There's just no real downside to it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that pretty much sums it up. Regarding Ty, I think he's, like I said, the locker room presence. Hopefully, he can contribute something on the field. But if not, I think his presence just alone will be fantastic for the wide receiver room.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on from T.Y. Hilton, I guess we'll see. We'll see how things progress with him. I'd be they're probably going to ease him into things. I'd be shocked if he plays this Sunday against Jacksonville. I'm saying that without any knowledge or anything. It's just kind of guessing kind of how they handled the Jason Peters thing. They'll take their time getting Ty up to speed. So, um, you know, eh, let's start with the injuries from the Texans game, and then we'll go into actually what happened in the game, because there's a pretty massive injury coming out of this game, and just really unfortunate. If you didn't know already, Terrence Steele tore his ACL and MCL, I believe in his left knee in the Texans game. At this point in the year where you're coming down the stretch run, you're just trying to be as healthy as possible. And Terrence Steele was on the short list of players you just really could not afford to lose. And, they're going to figure out a way to try and replace him. But man, what a bummer of an injury. He's been playing so well this year. He wasn't having a great game against the Texans, but he's been so good this year. He's so important to their running game. And beyond that, what they have behind him, I have major questions about. I guess, thank God Tyron Smith is coming back when he is, because it's now very thin at tackle. And I'm this injury just sucks. It flat out sucks on a lot of fronts.
Yeah, I think this is something that we talked at length or about during training camp about who are some of the most important guys this season. We mentioned guys like CeeDee Lamb, we mentioned guys like Trevon Diggs, and I think we both said during training camp that Terrence Steele is going to be an underrated part of this team this year just because of the lack of depth behind him at offensive line. I believe I even said that he might be the most important guy on the team. That if he doesn't stay healthy, we could have some issues. Now, obviously, we're now in week 15. We've made it through the majority of the season with him healthy, without Tyron Smith. But now, what we're kind of relying on is a guy, Josh Ball, inexperienced, and then we're relying on two aging veterans who, we were questioning earlier in the year, whether Tyron Smith would be able to come back. It's nice that he is going to be able to come back this year, hopefully this week. But now, if he goes down again for whatever reason, based off Tyron Smith's past, that's not out of the question. Then you're going back. It just opens up a lot of holes on the offensive line if Smith doesn't stay healthy, if Peters doesn't stay healthy, and if he can't get acclimated to the right tackle position. I'm assuming they're going to have him there. So yeah, it's horrible injury, horrible timing. But this is what the Cowboys pride themselves on, is drafting, developing players. And now we're going to see if Josh Ball can step in and be a serviceable player, or hopefully Peters can step in and kind of fill the void there as well. But I also do want to kind of shout out the Cowboys for kind of bringing Jason Peters along the way they did,
Yeah.
because if he came in and they signed him when they did and he hadn't really got any game action, I think we would be a lot more concerned than we are now. But now that they've kind of eased him into action, pretty much every single week that he's been here, I think he's going to be more ready and adapt to step in and hopefully play good football.
Yeah, it's a total bummer. And honestly, Cowboys aside, it just sucks for Steele because he was coming up on restricted free agency, and I mean he was going to get a pretty nice payday, and I think he'll still get a nice payday, but given the timing of the injury, given that it's an ACL and an MCL, I wouldn't be one bit shocked if he's not ready for the start of next season. If he's sort of a pup guy that misses the first 4 games of the 2023 season. So just big time bummer. And, now we're going to find out what they have in Josh Ball and Jason Peters. And we were just so close to having the full offensive line again with Tyron at left tackle, Tyler Smith at left guard, Biotish, Martin, and Steele. Just a really big bummer. And they're really going to miss Steele in the run game. He's so effective in space. He's a mauler. He's really fun to watch. Um, it just sucks, and they're gonna have to adjust. And every team in the league has injuries, but the injuries do seem to be piling up for Dallas at the wrong time. With Anthony Brown last week, also Jonathan Hankins, who's been playing really well for them at nose tackle, has a pectoral injury, which Jerry Jones said he is out for the rest of the regular season. Might be able to come back for the playoffs, but just a lot of injuries piling up right now for Dallas. And especially this Terrence Steele injury. Dallas, I believe, is 30th in the league, 31st in the league in pass block win rate. Make no mistake, the Cowboys have a reputation for having an awesome offensive line based on 5, 6, 7 years ago. They've been able to run the ball pretty well this year. Pass protection has not been very good this year, so uh, the pass protection is almost certainly going to be even worse now. So this is just a really big concern, and they're going to have to be careful with how they manage Peters and Ball, because you need Peters to be there for the floor, and they're probably going to manage his snaps as the regular season comes to a close to make sure that Jason Peters is able to hold up for these final 4 regular season games, and hopefully a long playoff run.
Yeah, and that's going to be the biggest thing is now, because I mean, I think you even have to kind of ease Tyron Smith back into action because
Yep.
if he goes down again, I mean, this offensive line just becomes an absolute mess. So yeah, the Terrence Steele injury sucks, and that was along with the uneven performance against the Texans, the injury part of it was even worse than that. So it just kind of combated that uneven performance. Now you're going to be missing guys going forward, having to adjust on the fly. But like you said, NFL teams go through this. We were one of the healthiest teams going into the playoffs last year. Way to get us nothing. So, maybe this little bit of adversity that we're going to have to go through this last month of the regular season will kind of hopefully pay dividends by the time the playoffs, where you get guys up to speed, and maybe guys step up that you weren't expecting to step up, and that's kind of the name of the game in the NFL.
And we're gonna find out. Well, the last thing on the Terrence Steele injury is we're gonna find out pretty quickly how big of an issue this Terrence Steele injury is gonna be, because this week they have Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen of the Jaguars coming up. Then they have Brandon Graham and Hassan Reddick of the Eagles coming up, and then they have Bud Dupree coming up, and the Titans defensive line, and Jeffrey Simmons, those guys. And then, close out the year, you're going to have Washington with Chase Young, Deron Payne. There's another really good one that I'm forgetting. I'm completely Jonathan Allen.
Yeah.
They're
Mhm.
you're going to find out pretty quickly how big of an issue this is. And I thought Josh Ball had a couple disastrous snaps, but I was, he wasn't bad in other spots. But yeah, you definitely need Jason Peters there to at least have the floor of okay right tackle play. And Jason Peters hasn't played right tackle since I was in
Very
about
long time.
kindergarten. I was in about kindergarten the last time Jason Peters played a little bit of right tackle. So yeah, it's definitely a big time concern. And shout out Terrence Steele. Hopefully he gets better and he'll be ready to go for next season. Let's talk about the offense against the Texans, because it was a really uneven day. Just a lot of miscues that they just kept shooting themselves in the foot. And even then, they were still able to roll up about 400 yards of offense. Dak overcame a couple interceptions to lead a 98-yard game-winning drive. There was just a lot of issues here. And it was, it started with Dak not playing very well. And then And then it was just a very uneven day. Just a lot of mistakes across the board. The play calling wasn't great. Kellen Moore, I just thought kind of went into a little bit of a shell with his play calling after a really effective first drive. A little bit too much reliance on the run at times when it just wasn't working. This was not a this is a very uneven day for the offense, and thankfully Dak Prescott turned it on and led an awesome 98-yard game-winning drive to win the game.
Yeah, I think it was play calling, but I don't even think they were leaning on the run too much. I think they got out of whack with the amount of throws that they had in this game, especially in the second quarter. I believe they had like 15 or 17 pass attempts in that quarter, which the formula for the Cowboys is not to stand back there and drop back and have Dak throw the ball, damn near 40 times. That's just not the recipe for success that this team has established. We need to get the run game going with Zeke and Pollard. Pollard only having 42 rushing yards, Zeke only 62, which that's just crazy to me. And what was weird about it is, Dak, he had some moments throughout the game where, again, just one of those things where sometimes I don't think he's just seeing the field all the way a lot of times. Now it's hard to say because obviously we're not in
Mm-hmm.
the meetings and seeing what the play call and which read is number one and how he's going through his progressions and all that. But on the first one, the pick, yeah, Noah Brown probably could have caught it, but again, not really a good read to make. The last interception, where the defense ended up bailing out the Cowboys offense and giving them the opportunity to go 98 yards for that game-winning drive, just another just bad read. But I just think the performance by the quarterback was off. The play calling was off. It was just CeeDee Lamb didn't really have much of an impact in this game. It was just a really odd performance. And it's something that I'm going to be monitoring this last 4 games of the season because this is kind of how things begun last year, where you start seeing some little cracks in the armor, and then you get to the playoff games. Even despite a Week 18 blowout win in Philadelphia, you think, okay, everything's fine. The offense is rolling, we're good. And then you get to the playoff game, and we see some of the same issues creep up. So again, this is something that going into this game, I wanted to see, them get off to a better start. They did that, and then you have the muff punt by Turpin, which was a huge momentum
Yep.
swing in this football game. And I just I'm going to be monitoring these last 4 games just to see if we see some more uneven performances like this, especially from the play calling aspect, just getting out
Mm-hmm.
of whack and getting away from the strengths that you've established throughout the last month or really throughout the season. Getting Tony Pollard more involved and just really having success with some play calling. Or on the flip side of that, maybe they kind of took my words to heart. Maybe they were listening to the podcast last week where I said, all right, let's not go out here and show our hand going forward. This is a game you should easily win. Maybe they took that to heart and actually did it, and it didn't look good. But again, they came out with a win, which is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
Dak led a 98-yard game-winning drive, which I think is a huge positive. Um, you know, being able to do that despite I don't really care about the opponent aspect of it, but just getting put in that situation and being able to execute when the game's on the line, I think is a transferable skill and a transferable thing that you can take forward. But the rest of the game, it has to be better.
Yeah, and one thing that just has to be better was the pass protection, and again, it just wasn't very good all day, and it was just kind of poor across the board in protection. Looking at the pressures allowed, Dak was only sacked once, but he was pressured 12 times. Tyler Smith gave up 4 pressures at left tackle. He did not have his best game. Josh Ball um, gave up 2 pressures in his limited snaps. Jason Peters gave up 1. Just a very off day from the offensive line where they weren't able to run the ball like we thought they would, and they just weren't able to protect Dak all that well. Especially after Steele went out, where Ball just he struggled, and maybe he'll get better as they're able to fully prepare him as like a starter. And it sounds like they're going to use a rotation of Ball and Peters in the Jacksonville game this week, which it's I don't love rotating offensive linemen in and out, but in this situation where you've got a 40-year-old Jason Peters that you're trying to manage, I'm not trying to burn Jason Peters out by week 16, 17. I'm on board with limiting his workload. to make sure he's ready for the playoffs, because I think in a playoff game, you're going to want Jason Peters at right tackle, just because he, in his 20 some snaps that he got, he looked very decent. He clearly has a little something still left. He's not going to give you what Steele gave you in the run game. Peters is not a great run blocker, but he gives you a decent floor at right tackle if they're able to get him ready. And it's harder than most people know to move around on the offensive line, position wise, but Peters is doing it, and that can honestly sometimes lead to injuries. So hopefully they're able to manage Peters and keep him healthy for the postseason as we get closer to the postseason. But yeah, just a weird day from the offensive line. They just weren't very effective on the ground, and just it was an inconsistent day. There was a lot of drops, a lot of balls off receivers' hands that, one of them was picked off. And then the second pick, Dak's arm got hit when he threw it. So just a lot of miscues that just cannot happen in big games. But in the end, Dak was able to lead a fantastic drive down the field. And I do think they kind of needed to get punched in the mouth a little bit. And I do think that was big for the confidence of them, just to say, no, we can go win the game. We can go down and with the game on the line, make something happen. And they did. And if you go back and watch that last drive, that's about as good as it gets from Dak Prescott. I mean, he made several big time throws on that drive, including the one to Noah Brown that got him, I think, inside the 20. When the game got kind of tight towards the end, Dak definitely turned it on after a slow start. And he had that one, when Dallas ended up getting stuffed on 4th and goal. I think this was the same drive where he dropped one right into Dalton Schultz and he dropped the touchdown pass. And I think the next play is when Terrence Steele got hurt. So if Schultz catches the pass, Steele never even gets hurt. Just again, mistakes kind of compounded on themselves, but they were able to figure it out in the end. And I think it was very important for them to kind of have their backs against the wall, because we haven't had that in a few weeks, and they were able to respond.
Yeah, and I know kind of a couple of things that I was looking forward to going into the game was, kind of seeing what type of role James Washington would have, and maybe he can make one or two splash plays, and obviously that did not happen. I believe he played 25-ish snaps, somewhere in that range. Only one target, no catches. So I look forward to kind of seeing how they use him going forward now with the addition of Ty Hilton. Like I mentioned earlier, CD Lamb, 5 catches, 33 yards. That's one of the few times that he hasn't had at least 50 or 60 yards in a game, which was a little disappointing. Noah Brown made a reemergence, 4 catches for 85 yards. Dalton Schultz, 6 for 87. And you mentioned, he had the crucial drop in the end zone, which, a franchise tag tight end just can't drop that pass. You got to, bring that one in. Then you had Michael Gallup drop one in the end zone on the game-winning drive. Obviously, it did not hurt them because they were able to still go in there. And he took quite a hit on that one too, by the way. He got popped.
He got
But
rocked.
still, you should probably bring that in. But yeah, just an overall uneven, unimpressive day until that last drive. But again, like you said, it was nice to see the quarterback, be able to get out there and, have that type of drive. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm getting tired of these kind of wake up punches that the Cowboys are needing to take down the stretch. Because it's PTSD, man. It's just PTSD. We get the wake up call with the Packers blowing the lead in the fourth quarter. You come back against Minnesota, blow them out 40-3. Then you're kind of sluggish against the Giants on Thanksgiving until the second half, and then you're sluggish with the Colts until the fourth quarter, and now you're sluggish pretty much the entire game against the Texans after the first drive. So I'm getting tired of this, and like I said, I'm going to be monitoring these situations throughout the final 4 games to see if they can finally kind of get back on track and really get things rolling heading into the playoffs. And the thing that the performance that they rolled out there on Sunday against the Texans is not going to get it done against the Eagles on Christmas Eve. So they're definitely going to have to play better, and hopefully they can carry some of that momentum from the last drive into these next couple of games.
Yeah, absolutely. They're gonna need a much stronger performance. at least, some consistency. And it's hard to complain a lot about this offense that's been so good since Dak has come back. But just they have some stuff to clean up, and they have a bit of a mess to figure out at right tackle right now as we hit the home stretch of the season. Let's talk about the defense, who I thought had an up and down day, but ultimately Houston was only able to, I think the defense only gave up 2 or 3 field goals on like full fields. Houston's 2 touchdowns that they scored, I believe, came on short fields. Still was not a great day by the defense at all. They weren't able to generate the pressure we thought they were. It was a really quiet day for Micah Parsons. You almost hardly notice him, which is really rare. They just seemed, and it was kind of the same way with the offense, but like especially early on, they just seem to have no juice, very disengaged, but they're able to make big time plays when it mattered. And I got to start with DeMarcus Lawrence, who recorded 5 stops on the day, which is really, really insane production for just one game. And he had 5 stops last week as well. And ever since we've heard about these injuries he's dealing with, he's just played through them, and he's been awesome for the Dallas defense so far. DeMarcus Lawrence just continues to make huge plays, and kind of similar to the Lions play that he made where he forced the fumble at the goal line on Dak had just thrown the pick. There's like 4 or 5 minutes left. I think 4 minutes left. Texans are inside the Dallas 5, up 3. If they score, the game's over. They're up 10. It's over. And on 3rd and goal, I believe Rex Burkhead was the running back. They give it to Rex Burkhead, and if DeMarcus Lawrence doesn't make this play, Rex Burkhead has a very clean lane into the end zone. DeMarcus Lawrence, I don't know what Texans O lineman he was up against, I forget, but he makes just a very clean swat and swim move, and just gets into the backfield. And not only does he stuff him, it's like a 2 or 3 yard loss, which makes the 4th and goal even more difficult for the Texans. So it was just a very huge play. And, DeMarcus Lawrence has just made plays like that all year. And that's what you need out of your star players. And DeMarcus Lawrence was a big time player on Sunday. And Dallas is going to need him in the playoffs. He's been outstanding this year. And again, I've said this all year. This is about as good as we've seen DeMarcus Lawrence play in his whole career so far.
Yeah, I think DeMarcus Lawrence in a game where we didn't really see a whole lot of splash plays by Micah Parsons. The secondary kind of didn't play really that great, I don't think. And DeMarcus Lawrence was that leader. He's a guy that he had the quote last week about the Odell situation where he is trying to get a Super Bowl, and that's really his main focus right now. And I think you're seeing that with his play on the field. I think he believes in this team and believes his team has a real chance to do something special, something that he's been longing for throughout his entire career. So what he's doing out there is just nothing short of great. He's displaying greatness out there, and I think he's setting the tone for the entire defense. Which when Dan Quinn says that he feels like the defense got tougher as the game got more imbalanced, I guess you can say, against Houston. You saw DeMarcus Lawrence, kind of be the main guy and take ownership and take the leadership of the role and making sure that this team didn't come away with an L.
Yeah, absolutely. One other thing, I mentioned the Jonathan Hankins injury, and like that is a big bummer because he's been a big time help. But the Cowboys' defensive tackles were awesome on Sunday. Osa made some plays. Carlos Watkins has been a revelation since he's been brought off the practice squad. He's been a really quiet, unsung hero for them. And then Quentin Bohanna, believe it or not, was Dallas's highest graded defender on Sunday with a 92 grade from PFF. Quinn Bohanna is really good. The Dallas defensive tackles have really stepped up in recent weeks, and hopefully they can keep it going, and they can keep that up for when Hankins gets back in about a month or so, whenever Hankins is ready to go. But yeah, the Dallas defensive tackles have been really, really good recently. They were solid on Sunday. Leighton Vander Esch was terrific on Sunday. Felt like he made damn near every tackle. And then you have to shout out Malik Hooker had a little bit of a tougher day, but you have to shout out Jaron Kearse and Donovan Wilson, who were just outstanding. I mean, they were terrific. That was maybe Jaron Kearse's best game of the year, at least if not, it's up there. A
After a
lot of
pregame
players.
scare.
Yes, after a pregame scare too, and I don't know how I missed that, but I didn't even see that until today. I don't know how I missed that Jaron Curse pregame
Hmm.
scare, but that would have been a disaster, and just another injury on the currently building pile of injuries the Cowboys have. But yeah, I don't know how I missed that Jaron Curse injury. I did not see that until this morning.
Yeah, and that was something that where, he's getting carried or not carried into the locker room, but he's getting assisted by trainers into the locker room before the game. And I'm sitting here thinking, because the way he came down on his left knee, just during, a regular pregame warm up drill, you're thinking, oh no, it's rarely any contact. And I mean, like I said, it's a pregame drill, so you're not doing much in movement in those type
Yeah.
of drills. And it's definitely scary. And then he came back out and he played the most snaps of any defender on the team. After that, it just goes to show Jaron Carson's been dealing with a lot the entire season. Just different injuries have popped up throughout the year, and it even started all the way back in training camp. If you remember, we were worried about kind
Mhm.
of all
Yeah.
right, well, like what's the outlook on him? It was a neck back injury, something like of that nature. But he's consistently been out there every game, and then for him to have the type of performance he had this past week, after another injury scare, was definitely impressive. And he's another leader on this defense. And it's something that we've talked at length about as well. It's just the balance throughout this entire team. Even when Micah Parsons or CeeDee Lamb has a quiet day, somebody else steps up and can step into that
Mhm.
role and, pick up the slack for, whoever's having, a down game by their standards.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And there was a lot of players that really stepped up. And again, I know I mentioned earlier, Leighton Vander Esch finished with 10 tackles and 7 stops, which is again, I've mentioned this stat before. It's a PFF stat. It's basically you make a tackle that's a negative play for the offense, be it a tackle short of the sticks, a tackle for loss, something of that sort. It's basically making a tackle that creates a negative play. And Vander Esch had 7 of them on Sunday. Not far behind LVE was Demarcus Lawrence with 5. Donovan Wilson had a couple. Damone Clark had a couple. Parsons had a couple. Just a lot of guys across the board stepped up on the defense. But yeah, LVE deserves a lot of praise, and he's been a very big time unsung hero for this Dallas defense as well.
Yeah, big shout out to Leighton Vander Esch. I mean,
Mhm.
he's played really well for the most part this season. He's another one of those guys like Anthony Brown has kind of become a punching bag for a lot of Cowboys fans. And anytime he does anything wrong, everybody's calling for his head, but then they overlook, the countless amount of good plays that he makes throughout an entire game. So yeah, I mean, major shout out to Leighton Vander Esch, and I've been really happy, with his performance this year. And it's going to be interesting to see kind of what his future looks like with the emergence of Damone Clark. He's come in and stepped up big as well. So do they want to, keep Leighton Vander Esch around long term, or do they move on with him because they feel comfortable enough with Damone Clark? I think it's going to be an interesting offseason question. But again, yeah, he played really well this week.
Yeah, let me look at his contract. Yeah, Vander Esch is just on a steal of a contract. Dallas declined his 5th year option after things really fell off after his rookie year, and they've got him on a 1 year. I think it's less than $2 million
Hmm.
deal. I mean, what a steal that's been. He's definitely in line for a little bit of a raise this offseason. So Vander Esch deserves a shout out as well. But yeah, those are kind of the names that stood out on the defensive front. Dorrance Armstrong also deserves a mention. He led the team in pressures with 4. But those are kind of the big names that really deserve some praise. Um, and honestly, with the current state of the linebacker core, as well as Damone Clark's played, Anthony Barr had a kind of a tough day. Damone Clark stepping up has really, minimized Anthony Barr's shortcomings. You aren't as reliant on him. And so, Damone Clark stepping up again has been huge for them. They've really just had a lot of younger guys step up, and that's the decent segue into the last thing I want to talk about. The defense was with younger guys stepping up. I know he had rough plays here and there, but I thought Kelvin Joseph was very decent in his first game, as being relied on as like a full-time starter. I thought he wasn't great, but if the bar, if the bar is like awesome corner, he wasn't there. But all we're looking for from Kelvin Joseph is just the bar that Anthony Brown set. And if that's the bar, he was he was all right for them on Sunday. And I think the more he plays, the better he's going to get. And I had very little to complain about with Kelvin Joseph on Sunday.
Yeah, and he even made a huge play late or in the
Yes,
fourth quarter
huge
on
pass
third and
breakup,
seven, which was a
huge.
huge play. So yeah, I definitely think that's kind of the like if he can start doing some more of that consistently, it's going to be huge for the secondary, not only for the rest of this year, but just going forward. When you look at the secondary and kind of see where things line up opposite of Trevon Diggs, I know Jerry Jones has really kind of been vocal the last like week and a half on needing Kelvin Joseph to step up. He's kind of been not calling him out, but he's been like, he's been trying to push it out in the media how valuable and how important this is to him, and how big of a opportunity he has here with the Cowboys. So to see him make a play like that in the fourth quarter with the game in balance like that
Mhm.
was definitely, I think that should be a huge confidence booster for him. And I hope he can build on that against a pretty good receiving core coming up in Jacksonville.
Yeah, and let's be clear, Houston wasn't exactly rolling out Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill at receiver. Yeah, that's no one's kidding themselves about that. But Sunday was encouraging for Joseph. Again, he wasn't great, but again, the bar here is Anthony Brown. If he can give you close to what Anthony Brown was giving you this year, you're going to be okay at corner. But yeah, I thought Deron Bland had a little bit of an up and down day. But by and large, I think in Deron Bland's time since he stepped in for Jordan Lewis, and yesterday Kelvin Joseph stepping in for Anthony Brown, the early returns are positive on them so far. So we'll see if it gets better. Both are young guys, so they're going to have their ups and downs. But I thought Sunday was encouraging for Joseph, and hopefully he continues to develop because they're going to need him. They're going to need him, and they have a lot of really young players on this defense contributing up and down. It's honestly exciting to see. I mean, there's so many young guys up and down this defense that they're one of the younger defenses out there. That I feel like all these names that we mentioned are pretty young guys. Since we've started talking about the defense, it's all younger players. So very, 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 very encouraged by what we've seen from the young players.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said this earlier in the show. I mean, this organization has definitely taken a shift on draft and develop. So to see so many young guys contributing at such a high level on a 10-3 football team at this stage of the season, and we're still kind of implementing young guys, as the season goes on, it's not only encouraging, like I said, for this season, but it's also when you look at Stephen Jones is always talking about a 3-5 year window and how he wants to keep guys in there and he wants to pay their own. When you actually have good players to pay, it creates a good situation for your team. Although, it kind of upsets guys like me when I want you to go be aggressive in certain situations in free agency. But when you have guys consistently stepping up, it doesn't really create that sense of urgency to
Mhm.
go out there and grab veterans like that. So that part of it I get, even though I still wish they would be a tad bit more aggressive, which I think they actually have this season. I think they've kind of not taken a shift in that philosophy, but I feel like they have been more aggressive
Mhm.
and bringing in guys like TY Hilton, like Anthony Barr, like Jason Peters, to kind of go along with this mix
Yeah.
to really capitalize on the moment.
Yeah, they've been willing to bring in guys that can help your football team. And I think the T.Y. Hilton signing was just look, we think you can help us in the playoffs and going forward. And as a veteran presence, he's on a dirt cheap contract, at least relatively, not dirt cheap relative to you and me, but yeah, I think T.Y. Hilton can help, and I think they've been much more willing than in years past to bring in veterans that can help. And Anthony Barr has helped this year. I'm very glad they have Jason Peters now with the Terrence Steele injury, and now we'll see what they get out of T.Y. Hilton. So, lots to talk about this week. We'll be back probably on Thursday to discuss and preview the Cowboys Jags game on Sunday. The return of Tyron Smith apparently is going to be this week. I believe Jerry or Steven, one of the Jones boys, said something to the media today that the current plan is for Tyron to play on Sunday. So it'll be very good to see number 77 back out there, and we'll be talking all about it on Thursday when we preview the Jaguars game. So, anything else to add before
Absolutely.
we get out of here, Corey?
No, that was good. Hopefully we have a better performance to talk about,
Yeah.
next week. But the preview's coming up in a couple of days, so I'm looking forward to getting in and diving into Jacksonville.
Yeah, and for all the issues that you and I and Cowboys fans on Twitter complain about, you're 10-3. You're one of the best teams in football, and we're hitting the stretch run here. So a lot of exciting times coming up for the Cowboys as they hit that stretch run, and hopefully get ready for a little playoff run here. So thank you guys for listening. Make sure to check out everything at the Dallas Sports Fanatic at DallasSportsFanatic.com. You can get us on Twitter at Cowboys News 365 and at Dallas_Fanatic. You can get us on Instagram at DAL Cowboys Fanatic. You can get me on Twitter at Nate_Sanch77. You can get Corey on Twitter at the Mr. Douglas. Till next time, we will talk to you guys on the Silver and Blue Podcast.